Today we have quite an ambitious task at hand. I want to share with you a framework that will help you create any text of any type with any goal in mind. Quick disclaimer, since it's a framework or a model, it will be limiting by its nature. It's good to remember that any model is a simplification of the reality and not the reality itself. Hence, it won't be able to explain you every single detail of every single text. However, from my experience, which involves 6 years of studying literature and linguistics and 2 years of working as a content manager, I gotta say that this framework does apply in 95% of cases. I also want to encourage you to treat it as a tool. Remember that I'm just a person on the internet offering you only one framework. There are many more and there are many different tools you need for different cases. You will never use a shovel to paint a picture, for that you will need a brush. Same with these things. Try to combine different models of frameworks or tools to create your own routine. Now without further ado, let's get started. Now, the framework. When I say that every text relies on these building blocks, I mean literally every one of them, from IKEA instructions to scholarly articles to fictional literature. The framework consists of three main elements, two of which you might already know. It's pace and depth. In regards to fictional literature, pace means the development of the plot. In a broader scope, pace means the way you propel your core message forward. It can result as literature review in scholarly articles, it can result as listing all the actions or events in journalism, and in instructions it's pretty obvious, so it's basically the instructions or the guidelines you need to follow in order to build a piece of furniture or hardware that you want to build. If pace moves your main ideas forward, then depth sets up the background and context for your story or any type of text so that it can flow smoothly. If we think once again about this example with scholarly articles, then when you do your literature review and first you state different authors and different theories you're relying on, which will be pace, then you looking at a particular concept and explaining when this concept was first discovered or set up, how this concept has changed throughout the time, some criticism towards this concept and alternatives to it, this particular analysis will be depth. Depth can also manifest as describing the feelings of your characters or describing a certain scene or a person in question if we talk about journalism. Now, the third element that you might be not as familiar with is the level of language complexity. And it's pretty much related to your ideal reader profile. So think of the audience you're addressing with your message and your text, and what is the background of this audience? How educated they are? What things they are interested in? Do they use common language? Do they use some type of slang? Do they like to use terms? All of this will define the language that you use in your texts. You can view it as a filter that only allows certain type of people to read your work. As you probably noticed, pace and depth exist within the same spectrum or on the same line. So if you increase pace, you naturally decrease depth and vice versa. Of course, there are certain exceptions out of this rule. Think of, for example, Virginia Woolf and the whole style of the stream of consciousness. It is meant to take us through the ever-going flow of actions or thoughts, and through that show us the depth, the feelings and morals of characters. However, even though exceptions are present, we're going to be relying on the basic framework and using it to build our own writing style. On top of that, I feel that quite often language complexity can correlate with pacing. Think of it as this language rating system from A1 to C2. So if you use more common words, if you use more simple language in a good sense, then it's meant for everyone, regardless of their background or level of education. But then if you use slang or certain terms, or you just use more advanced language, once again, think C2, then it's already meant for a certain type of audience. And it will naturally slow down the pace because the more charged the words are, the more time it will take to readers to process these words. Now that we laid out the foundation, let's move on onto the practical part. So, how do you use this framework? What's important here is not the elements themselves, but the ratio. So the ratio between pace and depth, and in addition to that, what is this filter, the language complexity that you're going to apply to your texts. Naturally, different text types or text genres will have some guidelines. As I already mentioned, instructions or manuals have little to zero depth. When you build a wardrobe, you really don't need to know how the concept of wardrobe has changed throughout the time and if there is any criticism to it. What you need to know is how to build a wardrobe out of a pile of separate elements that align on your floor. If we move to journalism, then we still see more base-driven literature texts, but already there we see some incorporation of depth. On the other hand, if we look at academic literature, then these texts will be more depth-driven with very little pace in them. And then fictional and non-fictional literature usually have the ratio of 50-50. If you're not sure which ratio is the most suitable for you, then I always think that 50-50 is the best place to start from. So you can use one-to-one method. Either you write it one paragraph focused on pace, one paragraph depth-driven, or you write it one page pace-driven and one page depth-driven. Another piece of advice is think of the authors that you admire. Maybe it's a writer, a journalist, a philosopher, or even an influencer. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you find their writing style particularly captivating. So look at some of their texts, and here I would advise against using their social media posts because these are usually very short and either pace or depth driven, so you can't really see the structure. So take some of their longer texts like essays or a chapter from a book or even the whole book or an interview. So take some of these, take a pen or a pencil and see how much space they dedicate to pace and depth. Quite literally, just try to count how many lines or paragraphs is dedicated to one of these elements. And then on the side, after this, try to analyze the level of complexity as well. By doing this exercise many times enough, by practicing, you'll eventually find the structure that works for you. And you will know it once it's feels natural for you to write that way, and B, you receive the outcome that you want. So if you publish your text, if you submit your article somewhere, or just have a blog, once your texts are being understood the way you want them to be understood, you know that you're doing the right thing. Let me know if this video was useful for you and I'll try to come up with some other writing tips. I wish you a productive writing session and I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.